The grand ballroom of the Saint Laurent Hotel shimmered beneath the glow of crystal chandeliers, casting reflections on polished marble floors. The air was thick with the scent of imported lilies, mingling with the quiet murmurs of the city's elite. At the heart of the gathering, Luca Moretti, a self-made billionaire draped in a tailored tuxedo, basked in the attention as he proudly introduced his companion, Isabelle Laurent, a striking brunette whose presence alone commanded whispers. Dressed in a crimson silk gown that clung to her every curve, Isabelle exuded confidence. Rumors had surrounded her for months. Some claimed she was Luca's brilliant new marketing director. Others whispered she was a mysterious heiress from Europe. But as Luca flashed a knowing smirk, it was clear the truth was far more scandalous. She was his mistress, and tonight, he was making a statement. The annual Legacy Foundation Gala was a night of prestige, a fundraiser dedicated to children's education. It attracted the wealthiest investors, political figures, and socialites, all eager to flaunt their status. But as glasses clinked and conversations about private yachts and market trends flowed, a sudden hush rippled through the room. The grand doors swung open. A woman stepped in, Sophia Moretti, 6 months pregnant. Her striking sapphire blue gown accentuated her growing belly. The gasps that followed were not just for her unexpected arrival, but for the man at her side. Adrian Cross, the elusive CEO of Titan Enterprises, moved with quiet authority, his protective stance beside Sophia unmistakable. Known for his sharp business acumen and private nature, his presence alone sent shockwaves through the crowd. Luca's confident expression faltered, his grip on Isabelle's waist tightening. For a moment, his arrogance wavered as his eyes locked onto his wife's unwavering gaze. Sophia had been absent from social circles for months, her whereabouts unknown. And now she had returned, standing beside one of the most powerful men in the city. The tension was palpable, electrifying the air. Sophia moved forward with poise, her chin lifted, her hand resting gently on her stomach. If Luca thought he could parade his affair in front of the city's elite without consequence, he was sorely mistaken. The whispers turned into a storm of speculation. What was Adrian Cross doing here? Was this a calculated move or something more? Luca forced a smile, but his voice carried an edge. "Sophia, I didn't expect to see you here tonight." Her reply was calm, deliberate. "Neither did I expect to find you so comfortable in your choices." Adrian's gaze remained steady on Luca, unreadable yet filled with quiet warning. The night had taken a dramatic turn, and the scandal was just beginning. Luca Moretti's voice carried effortlessly over the murmurs of the glittering crowd as he tapped the microphone, a smug confidence radiating from his stance. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us at the Legacy Foundation Gala. Tonight, we have an unforgettable evening ahead, and later, an announcement you won't want to miss. But most importantly, let's remember that every dollar raised tonight helps shape a brighter future for the next generation." Polite applause rippled through the ballroom as Luca turned, offering his arm to Isabelle Laurent. She accepted it with a practiced smile, her crimson gown shimmering under the chandelier's glow. As they descended the steps, they were met by some of the city's most influential figures. James Caldwell, CEO of Caldwell Industries, clapped Luca on the shoulder and cast a knowing glance at Isabelle. "Well, you certainly don't waste time, do you?" His words were low, meant only for Luca, but just loud enough for a few lingering guests to overhear. Luca only smirked. He welcomed the attention, the scandal, the whispers. He thrived on speculation, knowing that envy only fueled his power. Little did he realize, however, that his perfectly curated evening was moments away from unraveling. Because at that very moment, his wife, Sophia Moretti, was on her way. 6 months pregnant and moving with quiet determination, she was not alone. Flanking her was none other than Adrian Cross, the elusive billionaire CEO of Titan Enterprises, a man whose presence alone commanded attention. Hours earlier, Sophia sat in the vast living room of their estate on the outskirts of the city. Once, she had loved this home. The towering pillars, the sweeping driveway, the perfectly manicured gardens. But tonight, it felt hollow, a mere monument to the man who had built an empire while letting their marriage crumble. Luca had changed. The man who once rubbed her feet after long days and held her close during midnight cravings now barely acknowledged her presence. Business trips turned into late-night meetings. Excuses blurred into evasions. She told herself it was temporary, that stress and ambition consumed him. But deep down, she knew better. She had planned to skip the Legacy Foundation gala entirely, unwilling to endure another night of forced smiles and empty conversations. But then the phone rang. "Sophia, I don't mean to alarm you, but Luca, he's bringing someone tonight, and it's not just business." It was Natalie Ramos, her closest childhood friend, and now a legal advisor at Moretti Enterprises. Her voice trembled, as if terrified of the consequences of sharing the truth. Sophia's grip on the phone tightened, her free hand instinctively resting on her growing belly. She had suspected Luca's betrayal, but hearing it confirmed shattered something deep inside her. She took a slow breath, her heart pounding. "Are you sure?" A pause. "I wouldn't call you if I wasn't." For a long moment, Sophia stood in silence, her gaze fixed on the golden hues of the setting sun outside her window. Then, her decision solidified. She would not sit in the shadows, watching her husband flaunt his affair. Tonight, she would make sure Luca Moretti faced the consequences of his choices. And she would not be alone. "Sophia, I don't want to alarm you, but Luca is bringing someone tonight. Someone he's been seeing." Natalie Ramos's voice was barely above a whisper, thick with hesitation, as though she feared the weight of her own words. Sophia's breath hitched, her hand instinctively flying to her belly. She had suspected Luca's infidelity for some time, but the thought of him flaunting his mistress at the Legacy Foundation gala in front of the city's elite was almost too much to bear. Humiliation, anger, and heartbreak crashed over her all at once, leaving her momentarily paralyzed. She ended the call without responding, her fingers trembling as she set the phone down. The golden hues of the setting sun cast a warm glow over the rose bushes outside, roses that Luca had once planted for her as a romantic gesture. A lifetime ago, those flowers symbolized love. Now, they felt like a cruel reminder of how much had changed. Her jaw tightened, hands curling into fists. The betrayal burned deep, cutting sharper than she had imagined it ever could. A quiet cough behind her pulled her from her thoughts. Bernard, her butler, cleared his throat discreetly. "There's a visitor for you, ma'am." She turned, and her breath caught. Standing in the doorway was Adrian Cross. His presence was both unexpected and oddly reassuring. He had always carried himself with an air of quiet authority, a man who never sought the limelight yet commanded respect wherever he went. Once he had mentored Luca, but over time he had distanced himself. And now, for reasons she didn't yet understand, he was here. "Sophia," Adrian said gently, concern etched into his sharp features. "I heard something troubling about tonight. I wanted to check on you." Her lips parted, but the words stuck in her throat. "He's bringing her," she finally whispered, her voice breaking. "In public, at our event, and I'm supposed to just stay home?" Adrian hesitated only for a second before stepping closer, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "You shouldn't go through this alone. If you decide to attend, I'll be there with you. You have my full support." Sophia swallowed hard. For months, she had been the dutiful wife who remained silent, pushing aside her own pain. But tonight, she wasn't going to let Luca Moretti erase her existence. She would stand her ground. 2 hours later, Sophia fastened the last clasp of her midnight blue maternity gown. The silky fabric draped elegantly over her growing belly, and as she gazed into the mirror, she realized something. Beneath the pain, there was strength. A quiet, simmering determination filled her veins, lighting up her reflection with a glow that was more than just pregnancy. She stepped into Adrian's sleek black Bentley, her fingers tightening around the cool leather seat as the car pulled away. What she didn't know was that their arrival at the Titan Enterprises sponsored gala would set in motion a chain of events that would change everything forever. Isabelle Laurent was no stranger to the intoxicating pull of wealth and power. Born as Isabella Marsh in a modest suburb outside of Paris, she learned early how quickly fortune could turn against you. Her father lost his job when she was 12, and her mother's chronic illness drained what little savings they had. Poverty crept into their lives like an unwelcome guest, bringing desperation and a deep-seated fear of helplessness. Isabelle swore she would never be powerless again. In her late teens, she discovered her natural talents, sharp intelligence, a keen intuition for reading people, and a beauty that turned heads wherever she went. By the time she was 20, she had already mastered the art of social climbing. Older, wealthy men became stepping stones, each relationship elevating her closer to the lifestyle she craved. Every affair was a lesson, every whispered conversation a doorway to another business connection. Soon Isabel realized that in high society, money wasn't the true currency. Secrets were. She became an expert in uncovering them. With her newfound skills, she set her sights on the international stage. Monaco, Hong Kong, Dubai, she moved between elite circles, attending exclusive galas and forging relationships with men who could give her everything she desired. In New York, she charmed a real estate mogul. In Los Angeles, a shipping tycoon. But these were merely stepping stones. Isabel wasn't looking for fleeting luxury. She was hunting for something permanent, a man with an insatiable hunger for power that matched her own ambition. Then she met Luca Moretti. It was at a private investor conference in San Francisco, a gathering where the wealthiest minds in the industry exchanged billion-dollar ideas over glasses of aged whiskey. Isabel had encountered powerful men before, but Luca was different. It wasn't just his wealth, it was his restless ambition, the way he commanded attention the moment he entered a room. Their connection ignited with discreet conversations in the dimly lit bars of luxury hotels, whispered exchanges in private car rides, and long evenings over five-star dinners. Luca was both bold and brilliant, a man on the cusp of reaching the pinnacle of global wealth. He was ruthless in business, calculating in negotiations, and unwavering in his pursuit of more. Isabel saw an opportunity. She saw a kindred spirit. And Luca, bored with his seemingly perfect marriage, became captivated by her audacity and sophistication. She knew how to speak his language, one moment discussing stock markets and global politics, the next charming an entire table of VIPs with effortless grace. But Isabel had no intention of being just another hidden mistress. She was done with secrecy. Luca had promised her more than just lavish gifts and stolen weekends. He had promised that one day she would stand beside him at the Legacy Foundation Gala, a public declaration that she had finally arrived. What she didn't anticipate was the unexpected arrival of the one woman who could ruin it all. Isabel Laurent wanted more than just luxury. She wanted power. She wanted to be seen, to be admired, to stand shoulder to shoulder with the city's elite instead of lurking in the shadows of hotel suites. So when Luca Moretti suggested she accompany him to the Legacy Foundation Gala, she didn't hesitate. He spoke of it as their grand debut, a bold statement that would cement them as an unstoppable power couple. What he didn't mention, what he conveniently ignored, was the fact that he was still married to Sophia. But Isabel didn't care. As she stepped onto the stage beside Luca that evening, basking in the glow of the chandeliers and the hushed whispers of scandalized onlookers, she felt victorious. The weight of the city's most powerful gazes fueled her. This night wasn't just about Luca. It was about her ascension. She had spent years climbing, and now, standing in the spotlight, she felt she had finally arrived. What she hadn't accounted for was the arrival of the one woman who could ruin everything. Sophia Moretti, radiant despite her 6-month pregnancy, stepped into the ballroom, her arm linked with Adrian Cross, a man whose mere presence could overshadow Luca's in an instant. A hush fell over the room. Isabel stiffened, her fingers tightening around the champagne glass in her hand. She had expected resistance, but she hadn't anticipated this. Long before Luca Moretti tailored his suits to perfection and practiced his million-dollar smirk, he had been just a boy from the outskirts of Milan. The son of 2 hard-working parents, he had shown an early knack for negotiation, turning a childhood lemonade stand into a small empire by persuading neighborhood kids to invest in his business. That drive carried him through school, earning him scholarships and a place at one of Italy's top business programs. There, his ruthless ambition began to take shape. He entered every competition, joined every business society, and networked tirelessly. Some admired his determination. Others whispered that he was too aggressive, too willing to bend the rules. After graduation, Luca secured an entry-level position at a mid-sized tech firm. His relentless energy caught the attention of upper management, and soon he was being placed on high-stakes projects that required quick thinking and bold decision-making. Over time, he built a formidable network of mentors, but none were as influential as Adrian Cross, a venture capitalist who saw potential in him. Adrian took Luca under his wing, introducing him to billion-dollar meetings, teaching him how to read a room, manipulate negotiations, and navigate the dangerous waters of high finance. But as Luca's wealth and influence grew, so did his ego. The turning point came when he caught wind of a failing AI startup that specialized in predictive analytics for e-commerce. While other investors saw risk, Luca saw an opportunity. He scraped together every resource he could, determined to turn it into his next empire. What he didn't realize was that his reckless ambition was about to cost him everything. Luca Moretti had built his empire through calculated risks and relentless ambition. Using capital from his personal savings and smaller investors, he acquired a struggling AI startup for a fraction of its worth. Over the next few years, he pivoted the company into developing advanced consumer analytics, technology that retailers couldn't afford to ignore. As his company soared, so did his fortune. Contracts flooded in from major corporations, and soon, Luca's net worth skyrocketed. The lifestyle that followed was nothing short of extravagant: private jets, exclusive resorts, and luxury properties around the world. And along with all of it came Sophia. They met at a business gala where Luca was the keynote speaker. At the time, she was a public relations consultant, respected in high society for her intelligence and warmth. Unlike the sycophants that surrounded him, Sophia wasn't blinded by his wealth. She challenged him, softened his sharp edges. Even Adrian Cross, who had grown wary of Luca's ruthless nature, saw a different side of him when he was with her. For a time, Luca appeared truly happy. Their wedding was a grand affair, the kind that dominated headlines for weeks. The golden couple of the business world, celebrated for their elegance and influence. But Luca's hunger for success never dulled. As his empire expanded, so did his obsession with power. Deals across Asia and the Middle East demanded his constant attention, and soon he was rarely home before midnight. The affectionate husband who once showered Sophia with love slowly faded, replaced by a man who saw her reminders of balance as an obstacle. Then came Isabelle Laurent. She was everything Luca had become: calculating, ambitious, relentless. Their affair wasn't just about lust, it was an escape. With her, he didn't have to pretend to be the devoted husband. She understood his hunger because she shared it. So at the Legacy Foundation Gala, Luca was ready to make a statement. Standing beside Isabelle, he was no longer just indulging in a secret affair, he was flaunting it. Yet, as he adjusted his cufflinks, waiting for his moment, he felt something stir deep inside him. A flicker of memory, the man he used to be, hard-working, driven, but once capable of real love. And now, that love was walking through the doors, shattering his carefully constructed world. Sophia Moretti, 6 months pregnant, entered the ballroom with a quiet, commanding presence. And she wasn't alone. Adrian Cross walked beside her, his protective stance impossible to ignore. Seated in the sleek black Bentley moments earlier, Sophia had taken a slow, steady breath, willing herself to remain composed. She refused to show up broken. Tonight, she would be regal, poised, everything Luca once admired in her. Adrian's voice was low but firm. "Are you sure you want to go through with this? Confronting him here won't be easy." Sophia's hands rested over her belly, her resolve unshaken. "I have to. If I let him do this without consequences, he wins. And I refuse to be a bystander in my own life." Reaching into her clutch, she pulled out a folded envelope, the proof she had gathered, the leverage she needed. Tonight, Luca would learn that some betrayals came with a price. Sophia Moretti held the envelope tightly in her lap, the thick stack of documents inside representing weeks of careful investigation. When the first whispers of Luca's affair reached her, she had pushed them aside, hoping they were nothing more than gossip. But as the signs became impossible to ignore, she did what any woman in her position would. She hired a private investigator. What he uncovered was worse than she had imagined. It wasn't just the affair. Hidden beneath Luca's carefully curated image of success were fraudulent transactions, undisclosed offshore accounts, and shell companies set up to launder money. Luca Moretti wasn't just a man cheating on his wife, he was a man walking a fine line between wealth and ruin. If these documents became public, his empire would crumble. But Sophia didn't intend to destroy him. Not yet. This was her leverage, her safeguard against being quietly cast aside. Luca might think he could walk away, discarding her and their unborn child like an inconvenience, but he was about to learn how wrong he was. Adrian Cross glanced at the file in her hands, recognizing the official seals and financial statements. His jaw tightened. "This is serious," he said, flipping through the damning evidence. "If the SEC or law enforcement gets hold of this, it won't just be a scandal. It could mean prison." Sophia exhaled slowly. "I know, but I'm not planning to go public, unless he forces my hand. He needs to understand that for once there are consequences for his actions." Adrian studied her, a mixture of admiration and concern in his eyes. He had once seen Luca as a promising businessman, someone with the potential to change the world. But now that same man stood at the edge of self-destruction. Still, Adrian's loyalty wasn't to Luca. It was to Sophia, and the child she carried. He secretly hoped that tonight's confrontation at the Legacy Foundation Gala would wake Luca up before it was too late. The car pulled up to the hotel entrance. A sudden explosion of flashing lights greeted them as paparazzi swarmed. They had expected the usual lineup of celebrities and influencers, but the sight of Adrian Cross escorting Luca Moretti's pregnant wife sent the media into a frenzy. Microphones shot forward, questions fired in every direction. "Sophia, are you here to confront Luca Moretti? Mr. Cross, are you and Mrs. Moretti involved?" Sophia took a steady breath, squared her shoulders, and placed her hand lightly in Adrian's. With quiet confidence, he guided her up the red carpet. Inside, whispers spread like wildfire. Her heart pounded, but her resolve was unshaken. She was moments away from coming face to face with Luca and Isabel, and when that moment arrived, she intended to stand her ground, armed with the truth. Adrian Cross was a name spoken in hushed tones among the upper echelons of business and finance. A decade ago, his investment firm, Cross Capital, had transformed the tech landscape by backing revolutionary startups, including projects that reshaped artificial intelligence and predictive analytics. His instincts for success were legendary, but a tragedy had changed everything. His younger sister's fatal car accident had pushed him into seclusion, leading him to abandon the corporate battlefield in favor of philanthropic work. He withdrew from the public eye, choosing remote humanitarian projects over boardroom wars. No one had expected him to appear at the Legacy Foundation Gala, especially not as the protector of Sophia Moretti. The whispers spread like wildfire. Were they romantically involved? Was this the beginning of a powerful new business alliance? Others, who remembered that Adrian had once been Luca Moretti's mentor, speculated that his presence was a calculated move, an unspoken challenge to his former protege. The moment Adrian stepped into the ballroom, he commanded attention. Tall, impeccably dressed, and carrying an air of effortless authority, he exuded a quiet confidence that starkly contrasted with Luca's ostentatious arrogance. While Luca thrived on attention, Adrian moved with purpose, ignoring the murmurs, guiding Sophia forward with quiet strength. He dismissed intrusive questions from reporters with a polite yet firm refusal, focusing solely on the woman beside him. Sophia was grateful for his unwavering presence. Despite the sea of curious gazes and whispered speculation, she felt a sense of calm radiating from him. The anxiety that had gripped her earlier melted away, replaced by something stronger: determination. Together, they presented an image of undeniable power. The pregnant wife wronged by her husband, standing tall beside a man who commanded respect. Across the ballroom, Luca Moretti stood deep in conversation with investors when his gaze landed on Sophia. His confident grin faltered. For the briefest of moments, panic flickered in his dark eyes. He recovered quickly, forcing a tight smile onto his face, but Isabelle Laurent, who stood beside him, draped in a crimson gown, felt the sudden tension in his grip as he tightened his hold on her waist. "Adrian Cross is here," Luca muttered under his breath, his voice taut with unease. Isabelle arched a brow. "Who is he to you?" Luca hesitated. "My former mentor." Then his jaw clenched. "And that's my wife. With him." From across the room, Adrian met Luca's gaze. His nod was polite, but beneath it lay an unmistakable undercurrent of disapproval. Sophia, too, lifted her chin, her posture poised and unyielding. She had no intention of backing down. Isabelle quickly assessed the shift in the atmosphere. If Adrian Cross was involved, this wasn't just a simple marital dispute. Luca exhaled sharply, attempting to shake off his unease. Plastering an unaffected expression onto his face, he slid his arm more possessively around Isabel's waist. Then, feigning nonchalance, he led her directly towards Sophia and Adrian. The confrontation was inevitable, and the entire room was watching. A hush spread through the ballroom, the air thick with anticipation. Sophia Moretti stood within arm's length of Luca, her expression composed but cold, her gaze unwavering. Across from her, Luca forced a strained smile, but tension lined his jaw. "Well, Sophia," he said, his voice carefully measured. "I didn't know you'd be coming tonight." His eyes flickered to Adrian Cross before settling back on her. "And you've brought quite a distinguished guest." Sophia met his gaze with unshaken composure. "Hello, Luca. I hope I'm not intruding on your big night." Adrian gave her the smallest nod, silent reassurance that he was there, no matter what unfolded next. All eyes were on them, the unfolding drama captivating the room like a scene from a high-stakes battle. Guests at the Legacy Foundation Gala had expected an evening of luxury and philanthropy. Instead, they had front-row seats to a confrontation that threatened to shake the very foundation of Luca Moretti's carefully constructed world. The string quartet continued playing, their melody feeling oddly out of place against the tension thickening the air. Sophia felt her pulse thrumming, but she refused to let emotion control her. Memories flashed through her mind. Their wedding day, the night spent curled up by the fireplace, the moment they learned they were expecting. But the man standing before her now was a stranger. Luca recovered quickly, forcing charm back into his voice. "Sophia, you look radiant. I'm surprised to see you here. I thought you were resting at home." His attempt at small talk was almost laughable. Before Sophia could respond, Isabelle Laurent wrapped her arm around Luca's, interjecting smoothly. "Luca invited me to help him host," she said sweetly, her voice dripping with artificial warmth. "After all, it's such an important night for the foundation, and I'm deeply passionate about philanthropy." Sophia's nails dug into her palms, but she kept her tone cool. "How kind of you, Isabelle. I'm sure your passion for Luca's affairs extends beyond philanthropy." A murmur rippled through the guests. Isabelle's smile stiffened, her eyes flashing with barely concealed anger. Luca's expression darkened, his forced smile disappearing as he shot her a warning look. But if he thought Sophia would retreat, he was mistaken. She turned to him, her voice unwavering. "I came here because I have every right to see the woman you're parading around, and to remind you that neither I nor our child will be cast aside." Beside her, Adrian placed a firm, reassuring hand on her arm. His voice, calm but commanding, cut through the tension. "Luca, I'm disappointed. This isn't the man I once mentored. Publicly humiliating your wife, your family, is beneath you." Luca's jaw tensed. The entire room was watching, and for the first time, Luca Moretti realized he had truly lost control of the narrative. Something in Adrian Cross's words struck a nerve, triggering a flicker of guilt in Luca Moretti's eyes before his expression hardened. He quickly scanned the crowd, his instinct for self-preservation kicking in. Maintaining his image was everything. "I think we should continue this conversation in private," Luca muttered under his breath, his voice low and tense. "Sophia, Adrian, let's step out onto the terrace." The crowd parted like waves, making way as the four of them moved toward the grand double doors. Whispers and the frantic tapping of texts followed in their wake, but outside, the cool night air provided little relief from the storm brewing between them. The city lights stretched endlessly beyond the balcony, a dazzling contrast to the darkness settling over the confrontation. Luca turned to Sophia, frustration evident in his clenched jaw. "Why bring Adrian into this? Why humiliate me like this in public?" Sophia's eyes glistened, though her voice remained unyielding. "Embarrass you?" she shot back. "You're the one flaunting your mistress while I'm carrying your child. Did you really think I would just stand by and say nothing?" Isabelle Laurent opened her mouth to interject, but a single glance from Adrian silenced her. Adrian then turned his attention to Luca, his voice calm yet firm. "If you have any respect left for Sophia, you'll handle this situation with dignity." For a moment, Luca's shoulders sagged under the weight of his choices. Guilt flashed across his face, brief but undeniable. But Isabelle, standing at his side, tightened her grip on his arm. She was a reminder of the path he had chosen. Luca was at a crossroads. The entire city, and most importantly Sophia, was watching to see which side he would take. The confrontation was mercifully brief. Isabel played the role of the outraged lover well, but even those watching from a distance could tell her anger wasn't about Luca's wife. It was about her own ambitions being threatened. Sophia turned away before tears could spill, refusing to let Isabel see even a hint of weakness. Adrian offered his arm, guiding her back inside the Legacy Foundation gala with quiet strength. Their return ignited a fresh wave of whispers, eyes darting between them and the balcony. Sophia's heart pounded with a mix of heartbreak and a newfound resolve she hadn't known she possessed. She clung to Adrian's support, not out of weakness, but gratitude. Luca and Isabel remained outside, the tension between them palpable. Isabel hissed, her nails digging into his sleeve. "That was humiliating. You could have warned me that your wife would be here, pregnant no less, and with Adrian Cross, of all people." Luca exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. I had no idea," he muttered, and for the first time that night, doubt crept into his mind. "My dear Sophia showing up like that?" "Believe me, that wasn't my plan," Luca Moretti muttered, running a hand through his hair. His jaw clenched as he turned to Isabel Laurent, frustration flickering in his eyes. "And don't forget, you insisted we make our relationship public. Well, this is the result." Isabel's lips thinned. "So now you're blaming me?" she hissed. Then, lowering her voice, she leaned in. "Did you see the way Adrian looked at you? He could destroy you, Luca. You better pray he doesn't start digging into your finances or your business dealings." A flicker of unease crossed Luca's face. She wasn't wrong. If Adrian Cross turned his considerable resources against him, it wouldn't just be a scandal. It could be the beginning of his downfall. Taking a slow breath, Luca straightened his tie, forcing composure back into his posture. "Let's not cause a scene," he said coolly. "We'll finish our obligations here, then talk privately about our next move." Inside, the Legacy Foundation gala carried on, the program proceeding as planned. The host took the stage, inviting donors to pledge their support. The audience cheered as massive donations flashed across the digital screens. But beneath the polished spectacle, the real drama of the evening had already stolen the spotlight. Social media exploded with images of Sophia Moretti arriving with Adrian Cross, fueling sensational headlines. CEO Adrian Cross protects heartbroken wife from millionaire's affair, and Sophia Moretti strikes back. But what's her next move? Across the ballroom, Sophia and Adrian found a quiet corner near the refreshments. A few acquaintances approached with polite concern, but most guests kept their distance, unwilling to get caught in the storm. A waiter handed Sophia a glass of water, but she barely touched it. Despite the warmth of the crowded room, she felt cold. Adrian leaned in, his voice low. "I'm proud of you for standing your ground," he murmured, "but I'm worried about your stress levels. Maybe we should leave." Sophia hesitated. She was emotionally drained, exhausted from the weight of it all. But something inside her rebelled at the idea of walking away. "I need him to see that he can't intimidate me," she said quietly. "I'll stay, at least until the main announcements are over." Adrian studied her for a moment before nodding. He respected her resolve, but deep down, something gnawed at him. He had played a role in Luca's rise, never anticipating how unchecked ambition could corrupt a man. Now, Adrian silently vowed to be Sophia's shield against whatever storm Luca might bring. As the gala continued, an undercurrent of anticipation spread through the guests. Would Sophia crumble under the pressure? Or would she prove unbreakable? Would Luca's empire withstand such a brazen scandal? Or had his downfall already begun? Only time, and perhaps Adrian Cross's next move would tell. And in the days following the gala, the whispers only grew louder. The media frenzy showed no signs of slowing. Some tabloids ran sensational headlines, "Billionaire scandal erupts," while high society gossip columns featured anonymous sources gleefully spilling details about Luca Moretti's brazen display of infidelity. Though humiliated by the spectacle, Sophia Moretti found unexpected comfort in the flood of supportive messages from old friends and even strangers who sympathized with her. But more than sympathy, she found allies. The first to step forward was Natalie Ramos, her childhood friend and a trusted legal advisor at Moretti Enterprises. After her initial warning call, Natalie doubled down, arranging meetings with top-tier divorce attorneys and discreetly compiling evidence on Luca's questionable business dealings. If a legal battle was inevitable, Sophia would be ready. Then there was Marianne DuPont, an elegant philanthropist and longtime mentor from Sophia's early days in public relations. Outraged by Luca's public betrayal, Marianne used her influence to shape the narrative in Sophia's favor. Whenever Luca attempted to spin the story, painting Sophia as unstable or jealous, he was met with cold disapproval from key social figures. But perhaps the most surprising ally was James Caldwell, a powerful CEO and once one of Luca's closest confidants. After witnessing Luca's blatant humiliation of his pregnant wife, James reconsidered their friendship. Disgusted, he reached out to Adrian Cross, expressing disbelief at Luca's actions. More importantly, he offered to connect Sophia with financial experts who could discreetly analyze Luca's assets, ensuring her financial security should she pursue separation. At first, Sophia had feared being isolated, trapped in a battle she had no chance of winning. Now, she realized just how wrong Luca had been to underestimate her. Meanwhile, Adrian remained a quiet but unwavering presence. He visited Sophia at her estate, checking in on her well-being and that of the baby. His presence became a source of steady comfort, something she had never expected but deeply appreciated. Of course, the world had its own version of events. Some tabloids spun their own narrative, painting Adrian as a knight in shining armor, stealing away the millionaire's wife. Others hinted at an affair, speculating whether Sophia had sought revenge through the one man who could truly rival Luca. But she refused to dignify the gossip with a response. She trusted Adrian's intentions. He wasn't here for scandal. He was here because he believed in doing what was right. Luca, however, saw things differently. Fueled by anger and paranoia, he grew increasingly suspicious of the alliances forming around Sophia. And Isabelle Laurent only made it worse. She fanned the flames, warning him that Sophia was gathering legal ammunition, that Adrian's involvement wasn't just personal, it was strategic. Luca's grip tightened. For the first time, he realized he might be the one losing control. Luca Moretti responded to the growing storm with frantic late-night calls to his lawyers, rummaging through financial records to conceal any illicit transactions, and launching a private investigation to uncover who had been feeding Sophia information. But no matter how hard he tried to regain control, it kept slipping through his fingers. Each time he attempted a grand public appearance with Isabelle Laurent, the media refused to let his carefully curated narrative take hold. Instead, headlines continuously contrasted his actions with Sophia's dignity and Adrian Cross's philanthropic empire, deepening the cracks in his reputation. Investors took notice. Some began to hesitate, worried that Luca's unraveling personal life would bleed into his business ventures. The whispers of uncertainty turned into tense boardroom discussions. It was no longer a question of if a reckoning would come, but when and who would wield the final blow. The first real sign of disaster arrived in the form of a terse letter from the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. The request was simple, yet damning. Luca was ordered to submit documents regarding several offshore accounts he had naively assumed were safely hidden behind layers of shell corporations. Someone had tipped off the authorities, though he had no proof of who. His mind raced through the possibilities. Adrian? Perhaps. Natalie Ramos? Likely. Sophia? Unthinkable, but not impossible. Paranoia gripped him, leading to sleepless nights filled with desperate calls to his legal team. As if the SEC inquiry weren't enough, Luca's relationship with Isabelle began to fray. She had not signed up for scandal. The man she had pursued was supposed to be an unstoppable force, not one drowning in legal trouble. She began missing their scheduled dinners, citing business obligations. The once thrilling spark between them was now a slow-burning resentment, each accusing the other of disloyalty. And when she hinted that she could walk away if his empire started to collapse, Luca realized just how precarious his position had become. His once flawless public image began to show deep cracks. His employees whispered about his erratic behavior. The abrupt firing of staff he deemed untrustworthy, last-minute cancellations of critical meetings, even an uncharacteristic meltdown in front of key investors. Meanwhile, Sophia quietly continued her preparations. With Natalie's help, she compiled everything: documents, text messages and photographs, each piece a damning testament to Luca's misconduct, both personal and financial. Yet, as she looked over the growing file, she felt torn. A part of her wanted to expose him completely, to make him answer for his betrayal. But another part, the part that had once loved him, hesitated. If she destroyed him, what would that mean for their child? Still, self-preservation came first, and if Luca forced her hand, she would not hesitate. Sofia Moretti instructed her legal team to finalize a sealed divorce filing. All she needed to do was give the word. If Luca Moretti refused a fair settlement, she would ensure her unborn child's future came first, and if he tried anything underhanded, she would be ready to strike back. Adrian Cross, for his part, used his extensive network to protect her. His private investigators worked discreetly, uncovering more damning evidence: undeclared offshore funds, insider trading, and bribe-laced deals in foreign markets. Slowly, methodically, Adrian built an impenetrable shield around Sofia's interests. He never pushed for complete vengeance. He simply believed in justice and accountability. Rumors of Luca's downfall spread quickly. Board members at Moretti Enterprises began questioning his stability. Some even floated the idea that a leadership change might be necessary to preserve the company's reputation. And with every whisper of doubt, Luca's desperation grew. He was losing control over his business, over his public image, and most of all, over the woman he had once dismissed as fragile. Late one evening, Isabelle Laurent packed her designer luggage, leaving behind only a short note. She claimed she couldn't risk her own future by staying attached to a sinking ship. When Luca found out she had left, a strange mixture of betrayal and relief settled over him. At least she was out of the picture. But now, he was truly alone, left to face the storm he had created. As he stood in his now eerily silent penthouse, gazing over a city whose bright lights once symbolized his unstoppable rise, a brutal truth sank in. The empire he built on ambition, manipulation, and a touch of deceit was crumbling. And Sofia, the woman he had underestimated, was the catalyst for it all. But he couldn't decide whether to blame her or himself. Meanwhile, Isabelle's departure was anything but a retreat. From the plush confines of a penthouse suite at the Halcyon Hotel, she sipped champagne, scrolling through headlines detailing Luca's spiraling reputation. Luca Moretti's empire on the brink of collapse. CEO faces SEC investigation amidst scandal. She had always known when to abandon ship. As much as she had enjoyed the thrill of being on the arm of a powerful man, she had never intended to go down with him. Her entire existence revolved around aligning herself with wealth and influence, and the moment Luca's prospects dimmed, she had already begun her calculated withdrawal. Now she simply had to decide her next move. Isabelle Laurent knew how quickly fortunes could turn, and she refused to be caught in the wreckage. She meticulously erased any trace of herself from Luca Moretti's life. Every designer handbag, every sparkling piece of jewelry he had gifted her was locked away in a safe deposit box, rented under a pseudonym. She had seen it happen before. When a man's empire crumbled, everything he had ever touched became collateral damage. While Luca desperately fought to keep his business afloat, Isabelle was already scouting her next opportunity. She had cultivated an extensive network of powerful connections: tycoons, foreign dignitaries, and aristocrats, men who valued charm and strategic companionship. Someone among them would surely welcome her into their world. But one detail gnawed at her: Adrian Cross. His presence at the gala, his effortless authority, and the respect he commanded intrigued her more than she wanted to admit. She replayed the way he had stared her down, unimpressed, indifferent. Most men would have done anything for a second glance from her. Adrian, however, had looked through her as if she were nothing more than an afterthought. It was unsettling. She made discreet inquiries, trying to learn more about him. The rumors were consistent. He came from old money, had deep philanthropic ties, and possessed an unwavering moral compass. Exactly the kind of man who never succumbed to the tactics that had served her so well in the past. Yet she couldn't shake the thought that aligning herself with someone like Adrian might be her best move. If Luca's downfall was inevitable, she needed a new foothold. Through a carefully placed contact at Cross Capital, she arranged an accidental meeting at an exclusive art auction. Dressed in an elegant black gown, she exuded effortless sophistication as she made her way through the gallery. When Adrian arrived, however, he barely spared her a glance. He was there on philanthropic business, bidding on a rare set of paintings to support a local charity. Isabel attempted casual conversation, weaving compliments into seemingly effortless remarks, but his responses remained polite, yet distant. He knew exactly who she was, and more importantly, he knew what she had done to Sophia. Realizing charm wouldn't work, she decided to play her last card, sincerity. As Adrian finalized his bid, she stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I never meant to hurt Sophia," she murmured. "Luca told me a different story about their marriage, that it was already over, that she was just using his name to climb the social ladder." Adrian's piercing blue eyes met hers, his gaze unreadable but laced with thinly veiled disdain. "So you believed him?" he asked, voice cold. "Or was that simply the narrative that suited your ambition?" Her cheeks burned. "I might have been naive. I see that now." She hesitated before adding, "But I'm not the villain everyone paints me to be. I have a genuine passion for philanthropy. Maybe we could." Adrian Cross cut Isabel Laurent off with a curt shake of his head. "If you truly want to fix what you've broken, start by apologizing to Sophia," he said, his tone cold. "And then stay out of her way." He turned without another word, leaving Isabel standing there, her carefully rehearsed charm unraveling in an instant. For the first time in years, she had no clear path forward. She had always been able to maneuver through life, bending circumstances to her will. But Adrian wasn't just immune to her influence. He was repelled by it. A chilling realization settled over her. In a world increasingly shaped by men like Adrian, men who valued integrity over power, her time as the queen of opportunists might be running out. Meanwhile, Luca Moretti was running out of time. With the SEC investigation closing in, he faced the grim possibility of indictment. Desperation pushed him toward a man he had once considered both mentor and rival. Adrian Cross. Maybe, Luca reasoned, Adrian would offer him a lifeline, or at the very least remain silent on certain damning details that could tip the scales against him. Swallowing his pride, Luca made the call. They met in a glass-walled conference room at an exclusive, private club downtown. Luca arrived wearing an air of forced confidence, but the dark circles under his eyes told another story. Adrian was already there, seated at the long mahogany table, hands folded, expression unreadable. A tense silence stretched between them before Luca finally spoke. "I appreciate you agreeing to see me." Adrian inclined his head slightly. "You said it was urgent. I'm listening." Luca cleared his throat, his voice rough with exhaustion. "I know you disapprove of what happened with Sophia. And yes, I made mistakes. But I don't deserve to lose everything." Adrian's gaze didn't waver. "You once called me a protege," Luca pressed. "We built things together. That has to mean something." Adrian's tone remained steady. "That was before you abandoned ethical business practices, before you abandoned basic decency." A flicker of anger surged through Luca, but he forced himself to stay composed. "I need your help," he admitted. "You have connections within regulatory bodies. If you could just put in a word, I can fix this. I'll make restitution, whatever it takes. Just don't let them bury me." He hesitated before adding, "I have a child on the way." Adrian exhaled, his expression unreadable. His relationship with Luca had shifted over the years, from admiration to disappointment, and now to something close to pity. "Do you even realize what you've done to Sophia?" he asked quietly. Luca held his breath, and in that moment, for the first time in his life, he felt truly powerless. "You paraded another woman in public while your wife was carrying your child." Luca Moretti's gaze dropped. The attempt at maintaining his usual confident stance shattered under the weight of Adrian Cross's words. "Sophia was always too good for me. I see that now," he admitted, his voice low. "But please, Adrian, you know how this world works." He inhaled sharply, desperation creeping into his tone. "If the SEC brings formal charges against me, my reputation is gone. I won't be able to provide for my child the way I planned." Adrian studied him for a long moment before exhaling, his patience wearing thin. "I can speak to certain people," he said finally. "That might buy you time to come clean about your offshore dealings. But let me be clear, this is not a promise to clear your name. The law is the law. If you withhold anything or try to manipulate the system, you're on your own. Do you understand?" Luca swallowed hard and nodded. Yes, anything. I'll cooperate. Adrian leaned back in his chair, a flicker of something close to pity crossing his face. You also owe Sophia an apology, he continued. You need to come to an equitable arrangement for her and the baby. If you don't, I will personally make sure every shred of evidence finds its way to the authorities. Though the words stung, Luca recognized the truth behind them. This was his only chance to preserve what little dignity he had left. I will, he said, his voice hoarse. Thank you, Adrian. I promise I won't forget this. Adrian stood, signaling the conversation was over. Just don't betray that promise. Luca left the club with a mixture of relief and dread. He knew his path to redemption required swallowing his pride, confessing his wrongdoings, and making amends with Sophia. It wouldn't be easy, especially for a man who had built his entire life on ambition and an unwillingness to show weakness. But perhaps, in his darkest hour, he could still salvage what truly mattered. In the weeks that followed, Luca began the grueling process of damage control. As Adrian had warned, the SEC's scrutiny didn't waver simply because Luca had sought a private conversation with him. However, through a combination of voluntary disclosures, cooperation with investigators, and hefty restitution payments, he managed to avoid the worst possible outcome, a full-blown criminal trial. But the consequences were severe. His name was tarnished, his wealth diminished, and the pressure from shareholders was relentless. The board wasted no time. They convened an emergency meeting and, in a unanimous decision, demanded a new leadership direction. Luca was forced to step down as CEO of his own company. The decision was swift and merciless. An interim CEO was appointed, a steady, pragmatic executive who had been with the firm for years. Luca was given an advisory role, but it was nothing more than a symbolic gesture. He was stripped of real authority. For the first time in his life, Luca Moretti was no longer in control, and there was no one left to blame but himself. The media wasted no time tearing Luca Moretti apart. Once celebrated as a visionary entrepreneur, he was now a cautionary tale of arrogance and excess. Every headline revisited his public downfall, his scandalous affair, his business missteps, his humiliating fall from power. Sophia Moretti watched it all unfold with a bittersweet mix of emotions. She couldn't bring herself to revel in his failure, no matter how much pain he had caused. There was a time when he wasn't this man. The ruthless tycoon blinded by ambition. She still remembered Sunday mornings when he'd press roses into her hair, whispering promises of forever. But love, no matter how deep, didn't excuse betrayal. Their marriage was beyond repair, yet for the sake of their child, Sophia chose a path of guarded cooperation. Her legal team finalized divorce proceedings, but the settlement wasn't designed for revenge. It ensured financial security for their baby, while preserving Luca's dignity. She demanded full custody, but with provisions for Luca to have regular visitation, provided he made genuine efforts to rebuild himself. For weeks, Luca hesitated, suspicious of hidden traps. But when no further legal blows came, he finally understood. Sophia was sincere. The day he signed the divorce agreement, a profound weight settled over him. He had lost something irreplaceable. Meanwhile, Isabelle Laurent's world was unraveling as well. After being publicly shunned by Adrian Cross, she briefly considered courting other wealthy prospects. But her association with Luca's scandal had tainted her name, closing many doors. Desperate to salvage what remained of her reputation, she pivoted to philanthropy, leveraging the connections she had made in Luca's social circles. She founded a small literacy foundation for underprivileged children. Whether it was a strategic rebranding effort or a genuine act of redemption, the result was the same. Gradually, she rebuilt herself, though never with the commanding influence she once wielded in Luca's spotlight. As for Adrian Cross, his relationship with Sophia deepened in unexpected ways. What had begun as an alliance forged in adversity evolved into something more, a quiet, undeniable bond. It was never forced. It wasn't built on grand gestures or dramatic confessions. Instead, it was in the late-night conversations about charity initiatives, the shared passion for making a real impact, and the understanding that both of them had known loss in different ways. For Sophia, it was the loss of trust, of the life she once envisioned. For Adrian, it was the passing of his sister, the event that had driven him to devote his wealth to philanthropy. And in those moments of shared understanding, something unspoken passed between them. Something real. Something that, for the first time in a long while, felt like hope. Sophia Moretti gave birth to her daughter, Grace Moretti. Adrian Cross was one of the first to visit her at the hospital. He arrived with a simple bouquet of lilies, a stark contrast to the extravagant gifts sent by well-wishers. Sophia was touched by the understated gesture, and for a moment they sat together in quiet admiration of the newborn who carried both Luca's legacy and Sophia's resilience. Gazing into Grace's tiny eyes, Sophia felt the overwhelming weight of responsibility settle over her. This child was her new beginning. In the months that followed, Luca Moretti made attempts to redeem himself as a father. At first, his visits were supervised. He held Grace with unsteady hands, his emotions barely contained. Tears often welled in his eyes. Whether from guilt or love, Sophia couldn't be sure. But she allowed him space to form a bond with their daughter. He made no further attempts to reconcile their marriage. Perhaps he had finally accepted that some things couldn't be undone. Instead, he focused on rebuilding trust, though only in the realm of co-parenting. Some days were smoother than others. In an unexpected move, Luca started therapy, a decision that surprised even him. Through his sessions, he confronted the deep-seated insecurities that had fueled his relentless ambition. For the first time, he acknowledged how his insatiable hunger for success had blinded him to the emotional devastation he had caused, especially to Sophia. Progress was slow, but it was real. Though his reputation in the corporate world was tarnished, Luca found opportunities in unexpected places. A struggling tech startup in Seattle hired him as a consultant, and he took the job, traveling for work but returning to see Grace every weekend. Sophia, meanwhile, flourished. Freed from the weight of an unhappy marriage, she embraced the creative passions she had once suppressed. Alongside Marianne DuPont, she launched a nonprofit initiative called Heart to Heart, focused on providing emotional and financial support to pregnant women facing abandonment or domestic conflict. The cause resonated deeply with her own experiences, and the organization thrived. Donations poured in, bolstered by endorsements from influential figures, including Adrian Cross and his philanthropic network. Inevitably, rumors swirled. Tabloids speculated on a growing romance between the philanthropic billionaire and the newly divorced mother. Blogs spun stories of stolen glances and whispered conversations. For a long time, Sophia ignored the gossip, partly because she wasn't sure how she felt. She valued Adrian's presence in her life, cherished his friendship, and admired the wisdom he offered without expectation. But slowly, something deeper began to take shape, something built on mutual respect rather than scandal or ambition. It happened on a crisp autumn afternoon, months after Grace was born. When Adrian Cross invited Sophia Moretti to tour a community center he had funded in a low-income neighborhood, she hadn't expected the visit to feel so personal. As they walked through the halls, discussing plans to expand childcare facilities and counseling programs, their hands brushed accidentally. Sophia looked up, finding a warmth in Adrian's eyes that mirrored something she had only recently allowed herself to feel. In that unspoken moment, they both acknowledged the quiet intimacy growing between them. Neither rushed. Sophia was still healing from the trauma of Luca Moretti's betrayals, and Adrian was patient, allowing her to move at her own pace. Their first official date wasn't extravagant. They chose a modest Italian bistro, far from the city's elite hotspots. Over plates of homemade pasta, they talked for hours, discovering shared values and a mutual desire for a life built on purpose rather than wealth. Through it all, Sophia remained focused on Grace, determined to raise her daughter with love and stability. To her surprise, Luca occasionally showed genuine moments of sincerity. One morning, he sent her a message. "Thank you for letting me be part of Grace's life. I won't fail her the way I failed you." The words touched her, tinged with the quiet sadness of what might have been. The media's fascination with the scandal eventually faded, replaced by new celebrity dramas and political controversies. Sophia's story became a cautionary footnote, the woman who stood against her millionaire husband's public betrayal and emerged stronger. But her life was never about headlines. It became about compassion, resilience, and hope. The final chapter of Luca's downfall settled like dust, leaving behind hard-earned lessons for everyone involved. Isabelle Laurent learned that opportunism had limits, especially when faced with someone like Adrian, who couldn't be swayed by charm alone. Luca Moretti realized that hollow success, built on arrogance and manipulation, was bound to collapse. And Sophia? She found her voice, ensuring she would never again be overshadowed by someone else's ambition. As years passed, Sophia and Adrian's relationship deepened in its own quiet way. When Grace took her first steps, Adrian was there, cheering with the same joy as Sophia. He never tried to replace Luca. Luca was still Grace's father, but Adrian offered warmth, stability, and quiet guidance in his own way. At community events, the three adults managed a functional, co-parenting relationship. Luca, no longer blinded by ego, had come to appreciate Adrian's presence in Grace's life, if only because Adrian's influence had helped him become a better man. Adrian Cross's unwavering support ensured that Sophia Moretti and Grace never had to worry about security. Eventually, one quiet evening, he proposed. Far from the public eye, in the warmth of his estate, they sat together after dinner, while Grace slept upstairs. With only the soft glow of candlelight between them, Adrian reached for her hand, dropping to one knee. He held out a simple yet elegant ring, his voice steady but full of emotion. Sophia's breath caught. Tears welled in her eyes as she thought of everything that had led her to this moment. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the uncertainty. And yet, here she was, standing before a man who had shown her nothing but kindness, loyalty, and quiet devotion. Her answer came without hesitation. Yes. For a while they kept their engagement private, sharing the news only with close family and friends. By the time it reached the public, there was little scandal left to stir. Sophia had built a reputation of her own, no longer defined by the past. She had become a respected philanthropist, and Adrian, already a near-legendary figure in compassionate capitalism, was widely admired. Their union was more than just romance. It symbolized the triumph of resilience over heartbreak, integrity over betrayal. On a bright afternoon, they married in an intimate garden ceremony at Marianne Dupont's estate. Grace, now a little older, took her role as flower girl seriously, giggling as she scattered rose petals down the aisle. Close confidants surrounded them, sharing in the moment of joy. Luca Moretti stood at the back, a quiet observer. He hadn't come for spectacle or redemption, just to give his blessing and to be there for Grace on a day that would shape her future. He left soon after, but not before exchanging a respectful nod with Adrian and whispering to Sophia, "I'm truly happy for you." She squeezed Adrian's hand as they watched Luca walk away. They both understood the bittersweet nature of life, how heartbreak could destroy, but also how it could transform. In the end, every painful chapter had led her here, to love, to gratitude, and to a purpose greater than revenge. Dear friend, so we've just come to the end of this story, haven't we? And yet you're still here, still listening, still feeling. That tells me something. This story has touched you in some way. Maybe it stirred something deep within you. Maybe it made you reflect on life, love, or the choices we make. The truth is, we are not just storytellers. We are observers of life, weaving together moments that echo what happens in the real world every single day. Stories like this aren't just fiction. They are reflections of the struggles, the triumphs, and the consequences that unfold around us. And if there's one thing I want to leave you with, it's this. If you want honey, don't destroy the hive. It's simple. We all know it. Yet time and time again, people forget. Why do betrayals happen? Why do we chase things that leave us empty? Why do we only see the value of something once it's gone? Yes, that's the reality of life. But here's the thing. Stories like these remind us. They teach us. They help us understand not just others, but ourselves. So if this story moved you, if it made you think, if it made you feel, then stay with us. Follow the channel, hit subscribe, and be part of this journey. Because the truth is, we don't just tell stories. We create moments. We spark emotions. We bring you the kind of stories that stay with you long after the last word is spoken. And right now, the one thing we need most is you. So stay, keep listening, keep feeling, and let's go on this journey together. Like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next story.